Ukrainian army has launched a missile strike on the town of Glushkovo in Russia's Kursk region, local telegram channels reported. According to the information, one of the strikes hit the local post office building, the other hit the police station. As a result, both buildings were destroyed. Cars in the yard of the police station burned down. The Ukrainian side reports that both buildings are occupied by military personnel and that there are casualties. Russia has not provided any information about casualties yet.
The United States has resumed drone reconnaissance near Crimea after a year's pause, meaning that Washington is still interested in gathering information about Moscow's plans. This opinion was expressed on air by Anatoly Krapchinsky, Deputy General Director of a company producing electronic warfare equipment and an aviation expert on Radio NV. The United States wants to receive certain information about the existing forces of the Russian Federation and assessment of the actions. After all, what Trump says is one thing, and what the military in the Pentagon or NATO think about this is another thing. Therefore, this is directly a reconnaissance flight which can provide certain information. Do not forget that in the United States there are certain institutions that are engaged in analyzing the situation, collecting information, predicting future actions from any side. Therefore, it is important to receive information here, and most likely this was done for this purpose. The expert explained. Recently it became known that the US, after a year-long pause, resumed reconnaissance over the Black Sea with its RQ-4B Global Hawk UAV. In particular, it flies in the area of occupied Crimea. This helps Washington obtain information about the deployment of Russian air defense systems. It may help Ukraine to strike targets there with greater precision. Earlier, it was reported that the US raised the RQ-4B Global Hawk UAV during the attack on the defense forces in Crimea. It was noted that the drone flew to Crimea several hours before the strike and spent about 7 hours in the sky over the peninsula. There is one topic on which Kiev and Moscow will never agree, and yet, for both sides, this point is of the utmost importance: Crimea. Ola Kurishko, the Ukrainian president's permanent representative in Crimea, told Euronews that Russia implemented its 2014 techniques on all occupied territories. As Ukraine and Russia meet in Istanbul, questions are being asked about whether the talks could bring any progress, let alone a peace deal. While Russia seems to be holding up to its maximalist demands, widely seen as unrealistic not only in Kiev but also outside of Ukraine, one of Kiev's primary goals has been to prove to the US administration that it is the Kremlin and not Kiev that is the main obstacle to a ceasefire. However, there is one topic on which Kiev and Moscow will never agree, and yet, for both sides, this point is of the utmost importance: Crimea. Ukrainians are intensifying their offensive operations along the Russian border near Tyotkino. As Ukrainian forces pushed deeper into Kursk, powerful HIMARS and strikes of the Ukrainian Air Force played a critical role in turning the tide and setting the stage for further Ukrainian assaults, coming increasingly close to capturing another tactically valuable settlement, says Euromaidan Press media outlet. The Ukrainian forces continued with their border incursion toward Tyotkino. Strategically, this operation aims to divert the Russian attention away from their summer campaign in the Donbass and keep them tied to Kursk Oblast. Tactically, this is meant to stretch the Russian defenses further to expose their vulnerabilities for additional Ukrainian counterattacks in Kursk. The Ukrainian attack on Novi Put, where they exploited a gap in the Dragon's Teeth fortifications, divided Russian attention. This allowed Ukrainians to increase the pressure elsewhere and continue pressuring the tactically significant settlement of Tyotkino, which would significantly improve Ukrainians' positioning. Euromaidan Press reports. By controlling Tyotkino, the Ukrainian forces could shorten their border defenses by over 15 kilometers. Securing the settlement would also allow the Ukrainian forces to use the residential houses to deploy and conceal lots of soldiers and heavy equipment in the area, making it difficult for the Russians to identify or target them. Additionally, Tyotkino is right next to the Ukrainian border and very distant from the main Russian logistics hub of Glushkovo, exposing the deployment of Russian reinforcements along open roads, undermining the Russians' offensive and defensive capabilities. To take the settlement, the Ukrainians intensified their HIMARS strikes to deny Russians the artillery support needed to overwhelm Ukrainian ground assaults, Euromaidan Press says. Recall recently Ukrainians detected a North Korean Jush multiple launch rocket artillery system and relayed the location to a nearby HIMARS battery. The North Korean system was subsequently destroyed with pinpoint accuracy as the HIMARS projectile ignited the ammo and destroyed the system. On top of that, the Ukrainian Air Force conducted precision strikes to eliminate Russian forces' concentrations and fortifications in Tyotkino and clear the way for frontline assaults. The Ukrainian aircraft managed to conduct 3 successful strikes on Russian positions at Tyotkino train station, eliminating Russian forces with utmost precision and exposing a weak point for direct Ukrainian attack towards it. The activity of Ukrainian MiG-29s in this area implies that the Ukrainians successfully suppressed Russian air defense systems during the early stages of their incursion, meaning that many more airstrikes could be conducted in the future. Euromaidan Press reports. With the success of HIMARS batteries and the Air Force doing massive damage to Russian combat capabilities, ground assault units were poised to make another breakthrough. Overall, the Ukrainians are continuing with their border pressuring campaign, increasing the intensity of their assaults and advancing against poorly prepared Russian border units in Tyotkino. With intense fire from Ukrainian HIMARS units and the Air Force silencing Russian guns, Ukrainian infantry and mechanized units have been able to continue to press forward the advance, creating another problem for Russian commanders in Kursk to deal with.